welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining our session today, Calorie Labelling on Menus, an essential guide to support your business. We're delighted to bring you this session today from Brakes and Nutritics. Nutritics are Brakes' official partner on enhancing standards in recipe analysis, menu management, food labelling across the UK. I'd like to introduce you to Claire Steed, UK Business Development Director at Nutritics, who's hosting today's session. And we'll cover an overview of the new legislation coming in from 6th of April 2022, just 5 months away, and everything you need to know. This webinar is designed to help you understand who these regulations impact, what they can mean for your business, and simple steps to help you get ready. We'll also be sharing some fantastic resources at the end to really help you get to grips with what's involved. So in a moment, I'll hand over to Claire, but before I do, just a couple of practical points. You might have some questions as we go, so do feel free to submit those using the Zoom Q&A function in your Zoom menu, and we'll answer them all at the end. And we hope you really enjoy today's session. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Claire.
Oh, hi everyone, and thank you for the welcome, Fran. So I am the UK Business Development Director in the UK for Nutritics, and we're really proud to officially partner with Brakes in the offering of Virtual Chef Online. My primary role, certainly at the moment, is consulting with food service businesses around UK food law. So it's great to be here today to talk about the upcoming regulation on calorie labelling for the out-of-home sector in England, as it's certainly what a lot of the larger scale operators are turning their attention to currently and in the upcoming months as well. The aim today really is to give you all an introduction to the new legislation. I certainly don't want to do death by PowerPoint or be talking for 2 hours on what the legislation means and what's included and what the exceptions are. It's really just to break down the legislation into hopefully quite simplistic terms, as well as explaining a bit of the background as to why it is thought that calories on menus is such an important part of being able to tackle an obesity crisis that we're facing into. And also towards the end of the session, I'll be trying to give you just some really easy to follow tips to help get you started, so that no matter what part of the journey you're on, you'll hopefully go away from this session with some ideas of what you need to do within your business and moving forward. And as Fran has said, we welcome any questions that you may have throughout, so please do utilise the Q&A function within Zoom. You'll find it at the bottom of your screen if you hover your mouse over the bottom of your screen, and I'll be really happy to tackle as many questions in there that I can. So I just want to start really by trying to give a little bit of a background into why it is thought that listing calories on menus is important moving forward. It's well known now that tackling obesity is one of the greatest long-term health challenges we face in this country. And it's a complex disorder, and it's got many influencing factors as well. Globally as well, it's a huge problem. And a lot of that is down to an increased availability and intake of energy-dense foods that are high in fat and sugar. And that, combined with a decrease in physical activity due to the increasingly sedentary nature of many forms of work, changing modes of transportation and increasing urbanisation, means that our energy balance as humans has shifted. We're basically moving a lot less than we used to. So it's very common now that a lot of the population globally is consuming more energy than they actually expend. Multiple public health measures are required to tackle obesity, and calorie labelling is just one of those initiatives aimed at addressing obesity by impacting the food environment. As I've said, obesity is a major public health concern. The majority of adults in the UK are now overweight, and as this slide shows, it's a worrying percentage of approximately 63% that are classed as overweight. But perhaps more worryingly is that 1 in 3 children are now classed as overweight, and 1 in 5 are classed as obese. And children from lower socioeconomic backgrounds are twice as likely to be obese compared with children from more affluent areas. And that's worrying because it sets the scene for health inequality from childhood. It shows that whilst we might be facing into a health crisis here and now in terms of obesity, we are perhaps just storing up a bigger issue in years to come in terms of children being obese now at a very young age. And unless some serious measures start to be taken, that is going to become an unmanageable factor to manage into the future. One of the contributing factors to an increase in obesity is that as a nation, we are now eating out more than ever. Eating out or ordering food from restaurants to be delivered to our homes, so takeaways, is the new normal. And it has become even more so in the last 18 to 20 months as we've worked through this global pandemic. Many of us rely on catering facilities for at least 1 meal a day. And when we don't prepare the food ourselves, it's very difficult to know how it's made or what it contains. And research shows that foods prepared for consumption outside of the home are higher in energy, and increased consumption of those foods is linked with increased body weight. So as it's recognised that we now eat out more, presenting the calorie information for dishes available for consumption outside of the home is aimed at being able to give people information. Information provides transparency and it empowers people to make informed decisions. It is believed from various behaviour studies that people do generally want to eat healthily. And some studies have shown that when calorie information is presented on menus, it can reduce the amount of calories consumed and ordered by about 11%. And those small changes have the potential to make a big difference from a public health perspective, because actually that percentage equates to approximately 93 calories a dish. But actually, it's not just a public health measure. People do want more information about the food they're eating. When Nutritics ran a national public consultation on calorie menu labelling earlier this year, almost 90% of respondents were in favour of it. Furthermore, the demand for transparency around food provenance and environmental impact is trending in 2021. And transparency is being cited as the biggest driver of sales. So actually, when you consider that, so almost turning it on its head, initiatives like listing calories on menus could actually be used as an advantage within business. Standardisation and stock control also can help to ensure that you can keep your margins tight and can help us all to reduce food waste. So if you are open to it, you can actually look at this about it being more than legislation and actually turning it into a business advantage. So that's why the measures are being introduced to put calories on menus. So hopefully that's given you a little bit of background. And it really does have the potential to positively impact health. And there is, as I say, that strong demand from consumers who want more food information because it can positively impact business. So what actually is the legislation and how could you be affected as a food service operator? Well, the new laws are coming into force on the 6th of April 2022, and they will mandate calorie labelling for large food businesses operating in England. So if a business employs more than 250 employees, it will be required to put calorie information on its menus. So that largely impacts contract caterers and franchise groups, such as restaurants, cafes, coffee shops that you see in quite a lot of the high streets within England. However, there is strong encouragement from government for smaller businesses to adapt calorie posting voluntarily. And the scheme is going to be reviewed over the next 3 to 5 years. So it is worth bearing that in mind. And a point to note as well is that in Scotland, the FSS and PHS recently issued a joint policy statement committing to calorie menu labelling. And timescales around that should be announced soon. So the types of businesses that make up the out-of-home sector are businesses such as restaurants, fast food outlets, contract caterers, pubs and food takeaway outlets with larger venues. And it does also apply to third-party takeaway apps such as Deliveroo, Uber Eats, Just Eat, etc. So if they have any restaurant partners that fall within the 250 employee bracket, Deliveroo, Just Eat, Uber Eats, etc. will have to be able to show the calories on the menus displayed within their own apps as well. The legislation is a legal document. It's not advice. But because it is a legal document, it does sometimes mean it's not that easy to follow. But if you break the requirements down, it's actually quite simple. So you must be able to show the amount of calories in a serving of food clearly and prominently at the point where the customer decides what food to buy. That's usually beside the name, description, or price of the food item, as we're showing on screen at the moment. The information must be prominent. So it must be the same font, size, and colour as the food description it sits alongside. And a statement about the amount of calories a person needs in a day is required to help consumers make sense of the calorie information being presented. The statement required in England is adults need about 2,000 calories a day. The types of food that need labelled are foods like a meal at a restaurant, a sandwich that's been packed at a cafe or a deli and presented for sale in a chill cabinet, a loose sausage roll or pie at a bakery, all items presented on a menu, including sides and toppings. Just to make you aware at this stage, we have written a full ebook breaking this legislation down, and it also gives some really helpful tips and answers to some FAQs that have already been asked, and that will be shared as a resource towards the end of this session. So please do make a note of that because it will help you understand the legislation in full detail. So that's the background and what the legislation actually is, but how can you start prepping? And with a little over 5 months to go, with Christmas in the middle, it is highly recommended that you do make best use of the time available and start considering now how you're going to get yourself ready for when the legislation comes into force from the 6th of April next year. And to help with that, we've basically just broken it down into 4 S's. And that is all around supplier management, stock management, software, and staff training. So if we look at supplier management, first of all, it's recommended that if you haven't already, you do agree your approved suppliers, and that should form part of your general food safety protocols. Your approved suppliers should be willing to give you the information you need in a format that you can use, preferably electronic, so that changes to product information can be communicated easily and where possible in real time as well. Once you've agreed those approved suppliers, it's then a good idea to look at your stock management. And that's all about agreeing your ingredient brands in advance and agreeing acceptable stock substitutions in advance. However, we are very conscious at the moment of disruptions to supply chain, specifically in the UK. So it's about being as prepared as you can as well for variations in that supply chain. There is a tolerance in the calorie menu legislation, so calories can be slightly higher or lower than the actual calorific value that is shown on the menu. And that it's thought that that is primarily to help businesses cope with some of that substitution of product at delivery stage. But to remain within that tolerance, it is still really important that you work as hard as you can with your suppliers to agree those substitutions. So that even if you do need to switch one bread for another or whatever that ingredient may be, you can still sit safely within that tolerance and be providing accurate information to the end consumer. A software solution is really important when it comes to legislation like this, very similar to how it was if any of you had to tackle Natasha's Law and put allergen labelling on prepackaged goods. By having everything within a system that is managed electronically, the flow of data is coming from your suppliers into that system to make it visible and accessible to you. It lifts a lot of burden off your shoulders and really helps you to be informed and make proper operational choices when working in food service. The system software enables the sharing of food information in real time as well. So that's really important considering the previous slide where we were looking at supplier products and disruption to supply chain. If for any reason a product that you were expecting is not delivered, you need to be able to easily switch to a different product and still be comfortable that you are presenting the right information on the menu to the consumer. And that is absolutely where technology can help you. If you already have technology in place, then do revisit that straight away, do an audit of that technology. And there's three main things that you need to look at. So if you're using technology at the moment to maintain your recipes, can it automate calculations based on recipe ingredients, quantities of the ingredient within that dish, and can it apply cooking methods? Cooking methods is key in being able to present the right information to your end consumer, because choosing to cook an ingredient in fat or oil compared to perhaps boiling or grilling ingredients will fundamentally change the nutritional value once that dish has been cooked. So revisit your technology if you have it today, and just to reiterate, check that it can automate calculations on recipe ingredients, quantities, and cooking methods. And finally, consider your staff training. It's something that should never be forgotten, and the earlier that you can start involving them in the process, the better it becomes, because they can become more invested in the change. Staff across the business need to be empowered to ensure up-to-date information is maintained. They are the face of your business. These will be the people who are speaking to the guests who come across your door day in, day out, or are preparing the food in the background for those guests. If they understand the change and the impact of not supporting that change, they can provide a better service to you as a team member, but also provide a much improved service to the end guest as well. And what I would say before I pass back over to Fran, where we'll look at resources and other upcoming webinars to help you in today's ever-changing world, alongside moving into our Q&A, is that my role at Nutritics is to be a consultant. So if you feel that you are unsure of the legislation, that you have questions that you don't feel ready to ask at the moment, and that you just need an informal chat, even if you don't feel that Breaks or the Nutritics Virtual Chef online platform will be the right fit for you, you can always contact me. And my details are being shown on screen at the moment, and they're also included in the resources that we're sharing afterwards. Just feel free to reach out to me, and we will book in some time where I can have a chat through with what your business is, how it operates, what you have in place today, and help to identify any gaps that you may have as well. And I'll be more than happy to support you through this journey with just over 5 months to go. So thank you so much for your time. And Fran, I'm going to hand back to you.
So much, Claire, for that absolutely brilliant overview. A wealth of really useful information and a great just, I guess, starter for 10 on the whole thing. So thank you for that. I'm now just going to share the resources that go with this webinar. We've got a brilliant guide that Nutritics have put together, giving you an overview of the new legislation, and you can find it on this link here. You can either download it straight away using this QR code, or visit the short URL there as well, where you can also find it. And if you don't have your phone to hand now, don't worry, we'll be putting this webinar on YouTube so you can access it at a later date and download the guide whenever you're ready to. And also just a bit of a heads up about the other webinars that are taking place as part of our Winter Virtual Food Festival. We've got our session with the January on the 1st of December, 11 o'clock. This is a brilliant overview of vegan, plant-based market, consumer attitudes and behaviours. We've got a couple of great case studies from our customers around how they have been implementing plant-based and vegan in their business, and really what that opportunity is, and how you can use January 2022 as a great springboard. We're planning a great session on the 15th of December for leased and tenanted businesses, and sharing some brilliant solutions that we have on offer. So do tune in for that. And then on the 4th of January, we are running a follow-up session to today on this one, where we'll be sharing some great practical solutions and a bit of a recap on this session as well. So do join for that. Without further ado, we've had some questions come through, Claire, if we're okay to answer those. So the first one is, do we think the legislation is likely to be delayed beyond the 6th of April?
Yeah, it's a question that I'm being asked quite frequently at the moment. And all I can say at this stage is there are no signs or indication from the government that there's going to be a delay, despite we know there's a lot of business challenges out there at the moment. Nor is it thought that it will be scrapped altogether. I hopefully explained at the beginning of the session about the background and the thoughts behind it and the challenges that are being stored up into the future. It is a very hot topic in government at the moment to tackle obesity. So all I can say is at the moment there's no signs of it, and I would strongly encourage that it is assumed that it will be enforced from the 6th of April onwards.
Yeah. And do we think the legislation will roll out in Scotland in future?
Yeah, it's certainly the indication is showing that Scotland will closely follow suit. There's no dates yet, but they have just issued, so the FSS and the PHS have just issued a joint policy statement to say that they intend to show calories on menus as well. So we anticipate hearing in the new year, in 2022, early on, when those dates may be. So I think it is very reasonable to expect that Scotland will be following closely behind England. Yeah.
And is alcohol included in the new legislation?
Not at the moment, interestingly. So the legislation does say that for any beverages that contain 1.2% or more volume of alcohol, they do not conform in the current legislation. So by that, the legislation that will be enforced on the 6th of April. But drinks such as soft drinks in a cafe, you know, if you're serving your mochas, hot chocolates, lattes, Americanos, milkshakes, smoothies are a big one. All of those types of drinks will need to have the calories included in the menus, but as of the moment, alcohol is not included.
No problem. And will including details in a QR code or something of that ilk be acceptable? That's a good question.
Yeah, it is a good question, and a lot of businesses have moved to showing menus on QR code. But no, in all cases, the information businesses are required to display must be easily visible, clearly legible, and not in any way hidden or obscured by other written or pictorial matter or any other intervening material. So it may be that businesses give a QR code in addition to menus, and absolutely it can show on there, but it can't be the only way to show menus. Your customer needs to be able to see it at point of order.
So I guess that leads on to the question there, where does the information need to be displayed? I guess you kind of touched on it there really, but
yeah, but it's always worth clarifying. So it needs to be displayed on any digital signage, paper menus, labels and counter signs. And the information must, as I said already, must include the adult recommended intake. It's also just worth pointing out as well, and again, it's included in the follow-up of resources, but as well as being able to offer as default a menu with the calories, all businesses must be able to provide a menu without the required calorie information displayed as well. And the thoughts around that is that for some consumers, displaying the calories may have a negative psychological impact.
Right.
So whilst it's a default, if a customer, a guest, does ask for a menu without calories, businesses must be able to provide that as well.
That's a really, really good point, actually. I'll make sure we cover off as well. Thank you, Claire. Well, that's the end of the questions and the end of the session. So thank you so much for a brilliant overview, and thank you to everyone that's asked questions today. And Claire, you mentioned that people can get in touch with you if they want some further information and support, and your contact details will be obviously in these slides that we've presented today, so people can go back over that recording and get those if needs be. So huge thanks to you. Thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.